metaphysical, paranormal. You know, all those things you've been wondering about. Are you ready to go deeper into the realms of the unknown? I hope you've got your walking shoes on, because life is an adventure, and this is the journey. Come on, let's go.
Oh my gosh, everybody, I am so sorry. We are late. And you know why? Because we were doing the show and I forgot to hit go live.
It was great too. You guys totally missed a great show. Sorry.
We missed it. So I'm sorry. We're starting over now. So welcome to the show. I'm Jen.
I'm Jenna.
And we're the She Squatchers. We're missing Tammy tonight. She's doing a Thanksgiving party, so she couldn't be with us tonight. But we have Rod Nichols with us from Texas. Hi, Rod. Welcome to the show.
Hey, it's good to be here. And, things happen.
Yes, they do.
I'm so glad I actually caught that because I looked up and I'm like, where are all the people?
People.
Yeah. So there we go.
Everyone.
Hello. Anyway, so Rod, please tell us a little bit about your background in the whole cryptid community.
Yeah, absolutely. I think like a lot of other researchers, Patterson-Gimlin film was, the cornerstone. To me, it still is. As a young guy watching it on Leonard Nimoy's In Search Of, just getting into all of that. I was a kid that grew up in the 80s and 90s, In Search Of, Unsolved Mysteries, those shows were just really, they really resonated with me. I was always into cryptids, I really feel at a young age, I was a believer. It was fascinating to me. And, I refused to believe that there was, I refuse to believe that there wasn't any notion that there would be anything more out in our continent. I don't believe that we know every nook and cranny of the United States. So, understanding that, we could have a cryptid in the form of, Bigfoot or Dogman or any other cryptid was, for me, it was a likely possibility. So fast forward to my adulthood, I'm out of work for a little bit. I'm on disability, and I end up finding this YouTube channel from a gentleman in Utah, and he had presented his trace evidence in the form of wood structures. He did have footprints and things like that he'd found, and then he talked about some of his own encounters with these creatures. But the main source of trace evidence was wood structures. And that blew my mind because that was something that I never thought was something that could be connected to cryptid activity, or should I say alleged cryptid activity, because I was totally ignorant to the subject and ignorant to wood structures and things of that nature. But when I watched this gentleman's channel, it blew my mind and it changed my way of thinking. I think like a lot of other people that are ignorant to the subject, they think it's just one Bigfoot out there and it's in Northern California and they cut it on film one time and that was that, and the story, case closed. But what we found is that there is a thriving population, littered across the United States with several different encounters and sightings that are documented. So I watched the whole channel. I binge watched everything, right? The last video that he had, he challenged his audience to take his methodology. He mapped it out for you, how he found his trace evidence. And he presented the challenge. Hey, go out and look for yourself. If you think that this is a hoax, you think I'm putting you on here, here is the methodology. Here's how I do it. Go out and see for yourself. So I obliged. The next morning I got up and I went out to go find a wood structure, and I found a wood structure on the same day that I went to go look for a wood structure. And so, looking back at that moment, I truly thought there was going to be a team of people that are going to jump out and be like, aha, gotcha. and you're like, oh man, yeah, it was, it wasn't real, whatever. Never happened. And looking back at that piece of trace evidence, it really sparked some interest and a fire in me. And from that point on, I was in the woods. At any waking moment I can get, I was in the woods. I was, mapping out my areas. I was, documenting. I started utilizing videos and, narrating and things like that. So, after a while, I started making a connection between the creek greenbelt that I was utilizing as a research area, a part of it anyway, in my neighborhood, and making some connections with other wilderness parks that are connected to this creek. And the creek is called the Salado Creek. It's a historical creek in San Antonio. In case you didn't know, I'm from San Antonio. I founded Bexar County Bigfoot about 7 years ago, and that's my group, by the way. So, but going back to mapping out my areas, I never thought I would make a connection like this. And looking at it at its most northern part to its most southern part that I have gone to, every park that is connected to that creek, the wilderness parks, have some type of wood structure or a footprint that I found. It is all connected to one creek. Now, to me, I feel like that is very viable trace evidence. It wasn't just one wood structure that I found, and then I haven't found anything else. These are several different wood structures that are close in the way they look, the styles, the pieces of wood that are used. It's a very interesting subject, and so I've slowly I feel like I've become kind of the wood structure guy, because that's the trace evidence that I present. And so going down the line at Salado Creek, with each wilderness park, I was documenting these wood structures with video and pictures. Now, I had no idea what I was doing at the time. I was just snapping photos and taking videos. No idea. I had no idea that there was people out there that can elaborate a little bit more as to what they believe is happening, or maybe open my mind and my eyes to certain things that maybe I just didn't see. And I started posting my videos and my pictures on a Facebook group called Project Go and See, which was a part of this gentleman's YouTube channel from Utah. And a gentleman by the name of Christopher Noel got a hold of me, and he said, "Hey, man," he's like, "you're posting some pretty interesting stuff. Like, this is really cool." He's like, "Where are you from?" I said, "San Antonio, Texas." He's like, "Wow." He's like, "Would you like to be on my podcast?" And I said, "Sure, okay." Again, I have no idea what I'm doing at this point, but hey, I'll be on your podcast. So, we chopped it up on his podcast. It was great. And then from that point on, that became the birth of Bexar County Bigfoot. I had another gentleman that came around me that mentored me as well, who is a well-tenured researcher, and he brought along his wildlife biologist friend to examine some of my trace evidence as well. And when this gentleman came and looked at some of my trace evidence in the areas that I was researching, he had no answer for me. A wildlife biologist had no answer for me as to what kind of animal could be doing this. Is it people? Is it, he had no answer for me. So, when that happened, I knew I had something. And I don't think it was just I don't think it's just by chance that these things are built alongside this creek. I believe the creek is a highway, so to speak. Now, the creek that I'm talking about, which is, I just mentioned, is Salado Creek. It's a habitat for big game. It supports big game. And our big game is white-tailed deer. We've got them plentiful here. There's a ton of them here. And then there's water sources as you go down that creek. Some of it is actually coming out of the creek. Some of it is in the form of some ponds, things like that. So if you've got a habitat that supports big game, and you've got water sources, you've got a recipe for some possible cryptid activity. And I think that's what's been going on. And that is been about 7 years. Almost 7 years. I think next year in March, it'll be 7 years that I've been doing this. And then since then, I have acquired 2 other Facebook groups as well, which one is South Texas Monster Hunters. And then I have Bigfoot 101, which is another Facebook group. So I've been going for about 7 years. I haven't stopped. And, along the way, there have been some interesting things that have happened. So.
Nice.
Definitely.
You're such a good speaker.
Sovereign saying all rivers and major creeks are their highways, including some railroads and power lines. And I can say yes to all of that. We've experienced all of that.
You are preaching to the choir.
Yes.
I've been very fortunate enough to make some good friends, and like being on with you guys. This is my 3rd time. I love what you guys do. I've made several friends, from other podcasts and conferences, things like that. So to go out and take my trace evidence, present it to somebody, and go, hey, look, I found it off of this creek, this is, and they're looking at me and go, yep, this makes sense. It's very plausible, Rod, very plausible, because they've seen the same thing. They can take their notes and match them up against mine and go, wow, yeah, look, this is very different, but it looks the same. We may be geographically, we may be in a different area, but hey, guess what? There's a TP structure that looks kind of like the one you just found over here. So it's a very interesting subject. And, I really fully believe that wood structures are a part of cryptid activity. And it's just based off of encounters and reading books and things like that with other people who have encountered these creatures and wood structures, as well.
Absolutely.
Say, Rod, you are talking about these structures. What are these structures looking like? Are they like rectangular? Are they oval?
Yeah. So I've broken them down into a few categories. The first one that I found would be considered what's called an A-frame structure, and it's pretty much, there you go, A-frame right there. Then you've got your TP structure, which goes all the way around, just like so. You guys know what that is. You've got a wigwam, which has a roof that could be dome-shaped or flat. I call those wigwams. And then you've got your lean-style structure, where it's just, the pieces of wood or the trees that are leaned up against one main support, and it goes down the way. So those are the types of structures that I've been finding. Now, along with that, you'll find some other different type of anomalies. And what I mean by that is one of the consistent things that I find are the fake fire pits. I don't know if you guys see those, where there's rocks made into a circle, just like you would if you were building a fire, and there's kindling inside of that that ring of rocks, right? But yet nothing's been burnt. There's no carbon, nothing. It's just wood and moss that are just put in there as if to simulate, our activity and what we do. And that's something that I find consistently. The other thing is, there are other rock circles that I find close by in proximity to these wood structures, and they're giant. And those things, I really don't know or understand what that's about. If you want to get real woo-woo, some people say they're like portals, or, that's what they utilize type of thing, especially with the tree bends as well, where, one tree or a sapling is bent down and fastened either into the ground or onto another piece of wood. I've been told that those could be something that are part of the supernatural realm as well. But, again, that's something I can't prove. But those are some of the things that I find, and those are the style of wood structures that I find in my areas.
Well, thank you. That's great.
We have a question. Have we gone looking for the sheep squatch? I have not.
Is there really a sheep squatch?
We went looking for Goat Man.
Goat Man.
We did. We went looking for the Goat Man at the Public Monster in Kentucky. We went there, Louisville, and we've actually been there 2 or 3 times now. But we actually filmed part of a documentary there. So
Kentucky?
Yes.
Did you guys ever see the documentary Hellier?
No.
No.
Look up. Hellier is a small town in Kentucky And there's a documentary. It's called Hellier. It goes down the rabbit hole with some of these researchers that are from paranormal to cryptid, and what it seems to kind of, I guess, address is, do these cryptids come from underground? Because the cave systems in Kentucky are vast. They're insane. They go well deep into the ground, and they're very cavernous and things like that. But that was one of the things that was brought up in that documentary. Check it out if you get a chance.
Oh. Okay. Yeah, where can you watch that? Because I was just looking it up, and
I think, oh gosh, good question. I want to say I saw it on Netflix, but I'm pretty sure you might be able to find it on YouTube. Because
okay.
You know, some people will exclusively put out something on a one platform, and then later on, like a couple years later, like, hey, now it's on YouTube or
how do you
Pluto.
spell that?
Hellier. Good. Golly.
Hellyer.
Hellier. It's I think it's Hellier. Hell.
Oh, it's not Y?
I don't think there's a Y in it.
Okay.
Forgive me. It's been a long time since I've seen that documentary, but very fascinating. Very fascinating. I think you guys would enjoy it.
All right. Well, we're gonna have to check it out. I put it up there so that everybody can see the spelling.
Is this the one? Oops.
I think that looks familiar. Yeah. I think that might be it. Yeah.
I know what I'm doing tonight.
Check it out. It takes you down the rabbit hole, and you're just like, what? How did we end up here? Like, but it's cool though. I think you guys would like it.
Nice.
I'm so glad you're here, Alan. All right. So here, Rod, break down how if humans make teepees, it's usually small to mid-sized structures, usually copying nearby structures.
I'm sorry, what was the question again?
Break down how if humans make teepees, it's usually small to mid-sized structures, usually copying nearby structures.
Break down teepees.
The question's on the screen. Mm-hmm.
I can't see it. I'm on my phone, unfortunately.
Oh,
Rod.
And my eyes aren't the best at this age.
I am so there with you.
Not me. I'm kidding.
You know, if you're asking if there are human-made wood structures that I've come up to, you know, I've found one that I feel like was a human-made wood structure, and I believe it was kids nearby because of the backyard that I can see that was butted up against this creek area that was, you know, kind of desolate, but the neighborhood kind of ran parallel up against the creek. And the one thing I will say is this, because I've had this question before. Well, you know, people do bushcraft classes, Rod, and you know, how do you know it's not that? Well, you know, there's uniformity to what humans make. You know, usually there's going to be cut pieces with saws. You can see that. And the uniformity is a big thing because, you know, the size of the pieces, things of that nature, the uniformity of the structure, the how symmetrical it is, things like that. That's what we humans do. We want the same pieces, the same length, you know, and it's very uniform. It looks very symmetrical. The wood structures that I find are nothing like that. They're very crudely put together. They're woven in some cases. Some cases I'll have whole trees that are maybe 12 foot tall, maybe about 6 or 7 inches in diameter around, and they're torn limb from limb. And, you know, they're leaned up against one big tree, and then another one of the same style is put up against that. And then you've got more and then smaller ones, you know, and stuff like that really boggles me because they're not cut. The root system is still attached to that tree. The tree did not grow there. It was drugged from another area. It's huge, you know, and it's fashioned into maybe a lean or a teepee style, but there's no uniformity to these wood structures. They're very crudely built. It's almost like if maybe dare I say, like a caveman built. It's very primitive looking, you know. So humans, more uniformity. Alleged cryptid, what I feel might be not uniform at all, very crudely built, torn, woven, things of that nature. I hope that answers the question.
Sovereign just posted a comment, and Jenna will read it to you.
Oh, this is, maybe I should wear my glasses. Agree with that view, because I've caught several people adding or on or taking away from structures, but never made from scratch. If they claim to have made it, I eventually catch them lying for attention.
Sure. And you know, and again, I've had a lot, so you guys know as well as I do, in this game, you got to have thick skin. You got to have thick skin. You get people that'll come against you for any little thing. Some of it is just really far-fetched and really out there, and God bless them. Maybe they were trying to convey something else, and I just didn't pick up what they were putting down. But I get a lot of flack for it being in San Antonio, the activity that I present or alleged activity. There's no way Sasquatch is living in San Antonio or there's any activity, and I beg to differ. And the reason why I say that is because I'm basing everything that I know off of other encounters from people that have lived in suburban areas, that have seen these creatures dumpster diving. They've seen them around their neighborhoods. Now, these neighborhoods are adjacent to heavily wooded areas, things like that. But what I present is solely off of the creeks and green belts, and I believe those are highways for this activity. And now the piece of land has to make sense. You have to have passage in and out of that piece of land. I can't just go to any field or patch of woods and go, oh yeah, Sasquatch was here. Well, does the lay of the land make sense? Is there a water source? Is there a habitat that supports big game? Is there passage where I can conceal myself that goes in and out of that area? Is there a creek or a greenbelt that runs through it? Those are things that you have to really look at. I can't just sit there and go, well, Bigfoot's been here and, case closed type of thing. So, those are things that I look at. But I do get a lot of pushback on things like that. And, I used to get into it with people when I was in my earlier stages and to try and change their mind. And, it just doesn't happen like that. All I have to do for myself is stick to my guns and keep trekking and keep documenting, and by the way, I just thought about this today. I was out in one of my areas. I'm listening to a lot of podcasts, a lot of cryptid podcasts that are out there, a lot of wonderful cryptid podcasts that are out there. And a lot of these encounters that I'm listening to, and I don't know if it's by chance, the person that has encountered the creature that either lives in a rural area or they're in a state park, wilderness park, they're talking about these wood structures, talking about seeing these weird looking teepee things or wood structures put together. And then, they see the creature in the same area. And is that by chance, or do we have cryptid activity or trace evidence in the form of these wood structures? So, and some of these people are in suburban areas as well. So
I often do tell people you don't have to go deep off trail, deep into the woods, into remote areas to find Bigfoot, because they are closer than you think.
Yep.
I mean, yeah, they're deep in there too, but
they
you're
are
much more likely to find them closer to people.
Absolutely. And I think the notion that I would have to go out and spend all this money on this expensive equipment and, have this grand expedition, I don't think you really need to do that. And I'm living proof of that. I can show you areas where, man, who's doing this? This makes no sense. These things do not keep out light. They don't keep out rain. They don't keep out wind. What is the purpose? And it makes no sense. It really doesn't. Now, going back to the bushcraft thing, that makes sense, because the whole point of that is to survive. And that person is, putting moss on the side of their bushcraft, maybe little A-frame structure that they built. Like I said, the pieces are uniform. It's very symmetrical. These things seem to have no point to them at all. It's very weird, very interesting. And they look very primitive. So, I mean, Either we have one of the most orchestrated hoaxes known to man nationwide, because wood structures are found all across the U.S. Either we've got the most orchestrated hoax known to mankind, or we've got a cryptid problem.
Right. Exactly.
From what I've seen and experienced, it's definitely the latter.
I believe so. I believe so.
Just recently, Squatch Man Greg Yost posted a picture of a structure that he found on his hotspot in Indiana. And it is so much like the stick structure that was found while we were filming Searching for Sasquatch 10, the Minnesota Roars in Minnesota. Jason named that structure the spider web.
Nice.
And I was like, that's almost identical to the spider web. And, we're talking Minnesota to Indiana. And there's no way that could have fallen like that. There was too many trees coming together up in the air.
Right. And so, I think that, I'm sorry to interrupt. The only thing I wanted to say was, if I can take a like structure in construction and design and put it up against somebody in Oregon, Colorado, Northern California, come on. I don't know what else to tell you. I mean, if I can match notes up with somebody else and the likeness is uncanny, we've got something.
Yeah. I totally agree with that. Because that's too similar, and it's such a unique design as well, for that to, and large trees.
Right.
So, yeah.
Right. I mean, you have to wonder, is this incredibly strong people pulling trees out of the ground with the root system and then making teepees or wigwams or whatever, and then, just hoaxing people for what? What's the outcome? And by the way, the percentage of people that know about this stuff is very small in comparison to the general population. So again, we're talking about a very small percentage.
Very much so. Salmon was just saying that there's certain signatures to the Sasquatch built structures that are different than the bushcraft ones.
Very different. The big tip off here again is that they are very crudely built. 9 times out of 10, there's no uniformity. Some of these trees have been ripped. These branches have been torn. So there have now. I have seen some weaving. We have palmetto plants here, and I've seen palmetto leaves that have been tied and woven into other pieces of wood to fasten to another piece of wood. Things like that. So those things are sometimes found a little different, but for the most part, very crudely built. There's usually rocks inside of some of these things, bigger rocks that are, I think, just placed there for whatever purpose. So again, it looks like we're just walking into something very primitive.
Very much so. Jenna, we can't hear you.
I try so hard to not make noise while someone's talking. No, I was just thinking, all of these structures that you're finding, are they really sturdy, or are they gonna be like you could push them over?
Oh, it's all over. I mean, there's some that I can stand up in easily. I'm about 5'10". I'm not very tall, but I can stand up in some of these. One of these wood structures I've labeled, and it's on my YouTube channel. If you look up Bexar County Bigfoot, I've got one that I have dubbed the Beast, and it was the biggest wood structure I'd ever documented. This thing was giant, and I had the wildlife biologist that came out with me a few years ago. He's probably about 6 foot tall. He stood up in that wood structure easily. But there are some that look smaller, that don't look like it could fit a 7 foot biped. And again, I get questions on that. Well, Rod, this wood structure isn't big enough to fit a Sasquatch. Well, they have children, they have kids. You know, so they have a family unit. My theory on that, and while I can't prove this, it seems plausible as well. I believe all this activity, the hunting and everything in my neck of the woods is done at night, and I think that's the case with a lot of other people in their research areas. All the activities done at night, hunting and what have you. So I think that some of these wood structures that are smaller may be used for maybe the little ones where they can put them in there, conceal them, hide them, go out, do their hunt, grab their kill, come back, grab the little one, and go back to wherever they reside. And
you don't think they're blind? They're blind?
Some of them are like hunting blinds. Yeah. So the ones that are hunting blinds are usually within maybe 3 feet away from a game trail. And it's usually built up more of a wall on one side and it's open on the other. So that makes sense too, because again, the element of surprise, you can duck down and behind this little wall. Whitetail, they're creatures of habit. They take the same trail, all the time. So those are I mean, that was something. Actually, I forgot. Yeah, that is another style that I do find, which is kind of like a blind, but again, it's built up on one side more or less, and then it's open on the back. There's no roof or anything.
So, I've never seen anything like that.
Brown Dwarf is asking the million-piece structure, question mark?
The what?
The million-piece structure.
Million-piece structure?
Mm-hmm.
I think maybe you're referring to the one that I call the Beast, maybe? It's like a lot of... That thing, that particular structure is like... It's giant. Like there's so many different pieces and sizes in that thing. Like it's ridiculous. Shout out to Brown Dwarf though. That's my boy right there.
Is it?
Hi.
And while we're taking a little break here, I'm just gonna say thanks, Mike Colantonio, for coming in. He's Long Island Bigfoot. He came in.
Awesome.
And said hi. So I was just gonna thank him for coming, and everybody else, Robert Vivian. Everybody's in the chat, so welcome to the show. Yes.
Awesome.
He's saying salute Rod. I know Rod can't read it, but
hey, keep up the good work, brother. You're doing good.
For sure.
Yeah.
So have you seen like face to face with a Sasquatch? Yeah.
I have not, and I will say this. So you kind of try to take inventory of things that could have happened, or maybe you had cross paths with one of these things, back before you weren't really researching. And what I mean by that is before I started in this field, I was a single guy, doing my thing. And I remember coming home, my apartment complex, surprisingly enough, is right on the Salado Creek. I mean, I could literally, from my balcony, throw a rock right in the creek bed. It's right there. I was coming home from a bar, I was had my fun, whatever. And I closed the door and I was walking to my apartment. And as I was walking to my apartment, I heard a woman screaming, a blood-curdling scream, like sounded like a woman being tortured or hurt. And it was loud. It was just, it was insane. And my first instinct was to run over there to save this woman. That's just kind of who I am. I go into action.
Thank
you. Yeah, absolutely. That's just always been instilled in me from a young age. So that was my natural instinct. Run and go save this woman. And as I was running over to that creek, I had this overwhelming feeling of like, hey man, go back home. Like right now, don't do this. And I was like, maybe I need to go home. And it happened again twice. And when it happened a little bit closer, it scared me. It scared me to my core. I went back home and I tried to process what I heard. And I thought, well, maybe it was a fox, because foxes can produce, something similar. But this thing had lungs. It had lungs. It had capacity, and it was scary. and it instilled fear right away. So, looking back on certain things like that, I go, could I have possibly crossed paths or have gotten close to one of these things and just didn't know because, again, totally ignorant to any of this stuff at the time. But one thing I did know was that, hey, I need to go save somebody. But then I was stopped dead in my tracks. My body was like, nope, not doing this. And, I went back home. Now, roughly about a year and a half ago, my wife and I, we got growled at in an area where a gentleman had contacted me through Instagram. He messaged me and he said, "Hey, Rod, my daughter was out in this wilderness park. She was on the paved trail walking her 2 male huskies, and something screamed." He said scream/growl at her behind some thick brush. Now, she couldn't see what this was, but she did mention that when it did vocalize, it was so intense that she saw some of the brush moving while the vocalization was happening. The dogs, he said, who usually would protect their mom tooth and nail, tuck tail and peed themselves and had nothing to do with this spot. They took off. Well, she took off with them, trying to figure out what the heck it was that produced this vocal, and it shook her. She got in their car and texted her dad and told him what happened. He messaged me and gave me kind of a general idea of where that area was, and I knew where it was. And he said, "Would you be so kind as to go and investigate?" I said, "Well, yeah, that's what I do. I mean, of course." Yeah. So I went out, my wife and I, and we tried to find that general area, and I think we did. But we went a little deeper into an area where people normally don't go at all. And this was right along the banks of the Salado Creek. There was fresh running water. Just to give you an idea, we were on a game trail that ran alongside the banks of the Salado Creek. And then on the other side of that creek it's kind of like an island. It's kind of separated by the creek. And it's a thicker area. The underbrush is thick. There's lots of palmettos. There's these cypress trees that are giant. It doesn't look like San Antonio to me. It kind of felt like almost like East Texas in a way, kind of swampy, but just thriving. I mean, thriving, just beautiful plants and things like that. And then about, I would say about 15, 20 feet up, a few feet away from us was a high ground. Now that high ground has another game trail that runs parallel to the creek. So we were checking out the area, and then we went into that other thicker area where people don't go, and we were following this game trail. My wife was probably about 10 feet in front of me. She grabbed her handy little wood knocker, and she did a couple of knocks, and we kind of stood there quiet, and nothing happened. So we started moving forward alongside the creek on that game trail. And as we started moving forward, shortly after those knocks, I got 2 low guttural growls. She heard it. And as soon as we both heard it, she turned around and looked at me with these crazy eyes and said, "Did you effing hear that?" And I said, "Yeah, I did. It happened to us twice." The interesting part about this was when it vocalized, whatever this was, it had resonance. It was kind of like a bass hit off a hip hop song, right? And it was guttural. It was low guttural, and it resonated. And at the same time, it pierced. It runs through your body. It's very interesting.
Vibrating.
Yeah, it was very interesting. I'd never had a feeling like that in my whole life. Never. And instantly, it was fear. Like I was in shock. But at the same time that happened, up on the high ground, something was flanking us. I couldn't see it. I saw the saplings, these smaller trees that were plentiful up there on that high ground, and it looked like these saplings were shaking. I could see them like this, whatever this was moving through these trees and shaking them. back and forth, back and forth.
Wow.
So I had this thing up here, and I don't know what it was. I mean, maybe it was a person. I'm not sure, but it was flanking us, following us. We would stop, and it would stop. We would walk, it would walk. Now, what gets more weird is that I thought, well, heck, I want to grab, some documentation of this. I grabbed my phone, put it in my camera, and I move it up to try and see if I could grab, the sapling shaking or something. And right as I put my camera up, stops. Activity stops. I turn my phone off, activity's back on. Bring it back out, stops. It was very odd. And then you've got this thing over here on the other side growling at us at this low pitch, this low frequency. And that shook us to our core. And the only thing I can think about at that time was getting my wife back to the car safe. That was it. Mm-hmm. I can care less about pulling out my camera again and trying to capture in this stuff, or that was the last thing that was on my mind. It was backing out slowly and getting my wife safe into the car. And that's what we did. And then after that, we sat in the car for like 30 minutes just staring off into space going, what happened? Like, what? We had no answer. And to this day, it was just very interesting. So it was in the same general area that gentleman's daughter had gotten a vocal as well. And, as to what it was, I have no idea, but I can tell you this, the behavior, the flanking, the low guttural growl, the resonance, the type of frequency that it was, I feel was right in the pocket with plenty of other encounters with people encountering these creatures with these vocalizations. So, did we run into a Sasquatch, a Dogman? I'm not sure, but it was very unnerving. It was very scary.
Wow.
So it's funny that you just bring up Dogman, because Sovereign Cosmic Wildman has just posted, I recently heard a growl in someone's video from Texas, and I wonder if those can also be from Dogman.
That's a very good question. And I was just talking to my mom about this today. As a matter of fact, I said, my mom, my stepdad, and I said, wouldn't it be interesting is this whole time we're not chasing a Sasquatch or Sasquatch, plural, we're chasing Dogman. Mm. Well, what if this whole time it's Dogman? It's not Sasquatch. I mean, it's a possibility. It really is. And to my knowledge, people that have had encounters with these creatures also have seen wood structures in the area, and then, oh, hey, there's this Dogman in this area after they see the wood structure, or they see the creature and they see the wood structure, whatever comes first. So again, that's very interesting. On a side note, I did capture a very interesting print that made its way into the Small Town Monsters Dogman Triangle book.
Nice.
It by Aaron Dees. Aaron Dees lives here as well, and of course you've got Ken Gerhard lives in San Antonio, and then my buddy Ryan Edwards, cryptozoologist as well, lives in San Antonio. So we've got the squad here, that can research and things like that. But Aaron was kind enough to put my picture of that. I guess he felt like it was something that was in line with Dogman print, or alleged Dogman prints that have been captured as well. And then he put me in the book, which is really cool as well, which he didn't have to do. But that was a very interesting thing. And so looking back on that print, I don't know. It would be very interesting if this whole time I wasn't really chasing Sasquatch, but it was a troop of Dogman or something of that nature.
Right. Oh, yeah. Lordy. Yeah, that would be kind of disappointing too. I feel like crud.
Yeah, it's to my knowledge, listening to encounters of people that have seen these things close and too close for comfort. These things are pure evil. They get a rise out of scaring people. They get a rise out of fear. It almost gives them a charge in a way. I've heard of people shooting these things and it does nothing, which leads me to believe that I think we're dealing with something more supernatural than now. I'm not going to say that it isn't physical when it's here, but I think there are some supernatural things going on with this creature, simply because if we're talking about Bigfoot and Dogman residing in the same habitat, if we're saying that these are two physical creatures, that habitat would be decimated. The food source would be gone in like days.
Very
right?
true. Yeah.
Right? Because if we're talking about two physical creatures that are in excess of 7 feet tall, let's say over 500, 600 pounds, and they're purely physical, they would kill off a habitat that supports big game. So, but that hasn't really, I haven't seen that happen. So again, that kind of leads me to believe these things are more of a supernatural, a high strangeness type of cryptid.
Nice. Well, just think, oops, I'm natural. Don't shoot me. That's funny. I forgot what I was going to say.
That goes along. It goes along with what a lot of the native tribes talk about, with them being walking between worlds.
Sure.
That that they're here and elsewhere at the same time. So I mean, that would go along with that.
And you could speak on that. You're very knowledgeable. You're in that native genre and so you would know, right? I mean, and you've probably heard stories of some of these creatures approaching tribes, approaching areas where they resided back in maybe the early settler years, things like that. I've heard of these. I've heard of Sasquatch bartering with Native Americans. I've heard of Native Americans paying tribute to these creatures. Then I've also heard of them raiding their villages, their camps, and taking the women and children, things of that nature, which is very unfortunate. I've heard of tribes going to war with these creatures, so I fully believe that what we're dealing with in terms of Sasquatch, have been here years and years and years and years, way before we ever got here,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, my mind it's changing constantly. The more I learn and the more I ask questions, the more I change my mind.
Yeah,
you can't stay steady with all the information we're finding.
You truly can't, and that's a good thing to bring up, because in the beginning of this, I was an aper. I thought it was flesh and blood. That was it. It's some undiscovered primate that's out there, and and then I started digging deeper and listening. Now the key thing here was that I was listening to encounters, of people that have seen these creatures, gotten up close, and what I found was, number one, the behavior was consistent, right? For instance, this thing was rocking back and forth when I saw it. Okay, that was the guy in Oklahoma. The same guy in Oregon was saying the same. This thing was rocking back and forth, right? Or it was tree peaking. There's behavior that is consistent, no matter what area of the continent you are. And so that's something to take note of. But also, too, you can't dismiss the people that say, hey, look, I saw this thing right in front of me and it disappeared right in front of me. How do you answer that? Yeah. Or I saw this thing and it was running, and then shortly after it passed me, I was freaking out. Then this orb was right behind it. How do you explain that? So, I do think that there is a supernatural element to Sasquatch as well. And I think that's probably why we haven't been able to really catch up with this creature. I think if you're telling me it's just a primate and that's all it is, we would have had one right now. At least I think that we would have, Mm-hmm. But these things seem to elude us. And guess what? They're from 7 to in excess of 10 feet tall in some cases, and giant. Okay, how does something that big, A, run that smooth, B, not make people have heard, hey man, I saw this thing, it was giant, I didn't hear it walking at all. How is that possible? So you can't discredit the woo side of things. You can't. There's no way. If you're open to some of it, you have to be open to all of it.
Yes.
You really do.
Yeah,
really
you
do.
can't just pick who you're going to believe.
No,
Yeah.
You can't cherry pick things to fit your narrative. You can't,
Yes.
because there's going to be somebody that's going to come along and go, hey, I had a real experience and it was not like what you think it was or what you say it is.
Yes.
It's totally different. And then what? So I don't believe that these things are purely just flesh and blood, and they're an undiscovered primate that's just roaming the United States. I don't think so.
Well, they're coming up with new animals. I mean, they're finding new species and animals, and so and we don't even know what's in our oceans. We are so not knowledgeable about this earth.
Oh yeah, we absolutely are. And I would dare to say that a lot of this is coming from underground. I really believe that. And the reason why I say that, because the working theory that I have, at least for my area, I can speak on that because I know the topography, I know some of the history. The area that I'm speaking of where I'm at, is north central San Antonio. I can go a little bit further north up the Salado Creek. And in that area, there is something called the Edwards Underground Aquifer, or it's a recharge zone. Edwards Underground Aquifer Recharge Zone. Now that is where San Antonio gets its water, from an underground aquifer. Now, San Antonio sits basically on an underground cavern. That underground cavern, Edwards Underground Aquifer, stretches from San Antonio all the way to Round Rock, Texas, past Austin. That's how vast and deep that cavern is. Now, you can't tell me that the city government of both cities know every nook and cranny of these caverns. There's no way. There's no way. So the working theory is maybe there is a cavern, an opening that we don't know. I don't know about. I haven't discovered that these things come out of, do their hunt at night, get their kill, bring it back, go back underground, reside during the day, and then follow the same thing the next night. It makes sense. It makes sense.
There's a question asked for Rod. Have you experienced the hitchhiker effect? Has anything followed you home?
Thank God, no. Thank God, no. The one thing that I do believe is before I go out, I pray over myself for protection. I am a believer in Christ. I believe that is fully something that has helped me for protection, for guidance, and for wisdom. So and now that doesn't mean that that the choices that I make, I won't reap the benefits of the bad choices or the good. Everything has a cause and effect, right? So yeah. I'm not going to say, for instance, I'm not going to jump off a cliff and go, "Save me, Lord!" Like it doesn't work like that, right? But I do believe that God does protect, and I do believe that when I call upon my God to pray a hedge of protection over myself, I do believe it fully, and nothing has followed me, thank God. But I will say this: this may be another. I don't know if this may be another episode, but growing up, I had a grandmother that practiced tarot. That's how she made her money, her living, was reading cards, crystals, things of that nature, which, if that's what you believe, no big deal. But, this is the type of stuff I was exposed to. And with it came some paranormal activity, and some of it was kind of volatile. So I do have some of that growing up, but none of it's followed me. Thank God. Thank God.
You're lucky. You're very lucky.
Yes, absolutely.
Brown Dwarf is asking if you've had any squatchy dreams.
No, I have not. No. Trying to think. Have not. No. Maybe someday. I don't know. I think if I did, then maybe that would be something that some type of connection, or maybe some type of telepathy, mind speak, if you will. That people have experienced, which I do believe. I do believe that is something that is very real. I do believe that, again, going back to these creatures being, I think, supernatural, I do believe they do possess some of those things to convey whatever they want to convey to the subject that's, near or however far they are.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely.
Very
Definitely.
cool.
Mm-hmm.
Yay. This is so much fun. I'm enjoying this greatly. So
Yay.
so I liked the story that you shared about getting your wife to safety. I thought that was amazing that you had put her first in your thoughts.
Oh man, my wife is that's my queen, man. That's I will fight to protect her. I'll fight anyone any day for my wife, and that's just the way that is.
How long have you been together?
About 4 years.
We knew him
Beautiful. What?
What?
We knew him first.
Yes. We
Yeah.
did.
Yeah, I wasn't. We weren't married at the time. We were like just started dating at that time. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
That's
so I remember
awesome.
when you started posting about her, I was like, oh, he found somebody.
Oh man, yeah, she's amazing. She's
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah.
I know. I try to include her on some of the interviews because she's just as much a part of this, and has given me such encouragement to get out and do this. So I think that she has a plenty to say on the subject, but she doesn't want to get on camera.
So you get
I
to be
understand.
Yeah, maybe sometime. Who knows?
So
That would be neat.
It would be. Yeah.
Jenna's living in Texas now, so that means
Mhm.
that I'll be coming down there.
Yeah, man.
And hopefully Tammy too.
Yeah.
So,
And so
What part? What part again?
by Conroe Lake.
Conroe. Oh man, East Texas. You've got a slew. That's where a lot of the activity is. That we've got Sam Houston National Forest
Oh
up
yes.
there. The big thicket, right? Golly, I heard an encounter that was out of that area that I was mind blowing. I couldn't believe the guy made it out alive with what he encountered. He'd actually
Really?
shot one of these things and put it on its back. It didn't die, but he dropped it and it got up, and it was by. Now I don't know if you know where this is at, because I don't know where this is at, because of course for safety reasons they didn't disclose the exact location. It's the property this gentleman had was passed on to him from his father, and it was butted up against the from what I understand, the Sam Houston National Forest. But there's a pond that's there that they mentioned that was called Monkey Pond. But there was no coordinates given for obvious reasons. And that seems to be an area that has a lot of activity. I do have a friend that mentored me back in the day when I first got started in this. He had been there on an investigation with his group, and one of the nights he had spent there, he told me, he said, Rod, it was like being in a zoo. Like you could hear these things like woo, 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 like all. I mean, he said it was crazy. So you've got way more going on in your neck of the woods than I do.
Well, I can't wait to go hiking. I don't have anybody to hike with, so it's like, oh man.
Sovereign is saying supposedly aerial Sasquatches in East Texas. Have you heard anything about this?
I'm sorry, Ariel?
Aerial, yeah.
No, I haven't at all. That's something that's new to me. I've never heard of that.
Yeah, I was
Yeah,
like,
what I know, me too. What is aerial?
Sasquatch? Well, aerials.
Yeah.
Maybe
It's in the air.
a Bigfoot that can fly or hover or something. I'm not sure.
Perhaps.
No, I've never heard of that at all. That's interesting. I mean, I think when this. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
He said saw it in a documentary, Flying Sasquatches. What documentary was that?
Yeah, I'd like to know.
Yeah, for sure.
To be continued.
Right?
Yeah, that'll be number 4 for you.
Well, San Antonio has a history with these creatures going back to the 70s. I don't know if you guys know this. Yeah, they're the Olivari family. In fact, one of the brothers had purchased a shirt from me a while back, and his family lived in a rural area that was close by a Air Force base called Kelly Air Force Base at that time. And I think it was his older brother. I think he was younger. He's a younger brother. His older brother saw this creature running across across their backyard in this rural area that they live in, and it just blew his mind. And then they found footprints, and these footprints are actually documented in the newspaper. It was a newspaper called the San Antonio Light. It's not around anymore, but you can actually look up the article, and the sister is there looking. She's there looking at the camera, but there you can see the footprint right there next to her in the ground, which is very interesting. But it didn't stop there. There was a neighbor, I believe a late elderly lady that lived close by in the neighborhood that had a juvenile sitting on her back porch on the steps. She was cooking, I believe, and looked out her back window and saw this little juvenile sitting on the steps and shoot it away. She shoot it away and looked up at her and jumped up and ran off. And she reported as well. And I believe, who was it that went down there to look at? It was one of the four horsemen of our field went down and I think interviewed the family and looked at the evidence. And I believe also later on, Ken Gerhardt had went to the same area to kind of get an understanding of how this happened, or maybe ask some questions. So we do have a history with these things. Also in the 2000s, we had early 2000s, we had a homeless couple that encountered one of these creatures by their camp. They were in the woods. They were camping in the woods, and this was in an area that's more on the northwest side of San Antonio, heavily wooded area, up against the highway. And they were walking to their camp, saw this creature with the white-tailed doe in its hand. I guess they thought maybe it was eating it, judging by the blood on its face and things like that. It jumped up, saw them, screamed at them, threw the whitetail over its shoulder and ran off. And she called 911, and the phone call is recorded. I think you could actually look it up on YouTube. I think it's a homeless couple 911 Bigfoot. I think something like that. And this poor lady, she had no idea. She was trying to process what she saw. She was looking for animal control. She thought it was like this big monkey that escaped or something. And so they sent out an officer, and nothing came of it. But a few other researchers had gone out there to go check on the area, and I believe maybe one of them found a print or something like that. I think Ken was one that came out there as well. But we do have a history, and I hear people that will give me little bits of information of their encounters in the city that just don't they don't want to be on camera. They don't want to be interviewed. They just don't and rightfully so. They don't want to be ridiculed. They don't want to be made fun of, and maybe some of them had some PTSD as a result of encountering this creature. But we do have activity. It's not very consistent, but it does happen here, which only solidifies my research and what I do. Because I tend to believe that, again, if we have a habitat that supports big game, we have a water source, we have creeks or green belts that possess an entrance and an exit into a certain area, you've got a recipe for possible cryptid activity.
Definitely.
Yeah.
What is
With
that?
that, we have reached the end of the show, everyone. Thank you for tuning in, and I'm not going to be here next week. I'm going to be working out of town, so we might have a show next week. So,
goodbye, everybody.
Happy Thanksgiving, everyone.
Happy Thanksgiving.